The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Sunday, the 11th of May, 2025, and it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to everybody out there and to all of you that are mothers in a different way as well, because there's so many different types of mothers these days, looking after adults with autism and all kinds of stuff. So thank you to you all for all the work you do, and happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Okay, right, let's get on with Michael Nevadakis in The Defender. Trump taps Maha supporter Dr. Casey Means for Surgeon General. The move came after President Donald Trump at the last minute pulled the nomination of his previous choice, Dr. Jeanette Neshawat, amid concerns about her alignment with the Make America Healthy Again agenda and allegations that she misrepresented her credentials. There's about split half-half on how people are feeling about this.
So yeah, Dr. Neshawat did seem to have some serious problems. She likely wasn't going to be confirmed. There seemed to be inaccurate information in her resume. She was involved in a long-running malpractice lawsuit that apparently they hadn't learned about. She was pushing COVID shots on children until quite late. So I think, generally speaking, people were happy that her nomination was dropped. So Dr. Casey Means has been nominated. She clearly has the strong backing of Bobby Kennedy and of President Trump. She does have excellent credentials, having graduated from Stanford Medical School, being top of her class, having done a residency. Some people expressed concern, Polly, that she really hasn't practiced medicine in a typical way. She left her residency. She started seeing patients and really focusing on metabolic health. I think Secretary Kennedy sees that in a very positive way, that she saw that traditional medicine focused exclusively on pharmaceuticals isn't really serving people. And so she's been really working with people on metabolic health, on really focusing on diet, exercise. She has a company, or she had a company, I assume she'll have to step away from it, that was to do glucose monitoring, really seeing the problems with sugar in people's diets. I'm excited that she does seem very aligned with Secretary Kennedy and with President Trump. And that, to me, suggests, Polly, that in this job where she will be head of 6,000 people in the public health service, that she can get things done and she can focus on the critical roles of food and exercise and lifestyle, and much less emphasis on pharmaceuticals.
Brenda Belletti in The Defender. So media slams NIH for axing Safe to Sleep campaign, but evidence shows the program never reduced SIDS deaths. The NIH claimed to have reduced SIDS deaths by more than 50%. But, however, research published in Pediatrics and other top journals shows that SIDS deaths didn't substantially drop. They were just reclassified as something else. This is huge news, Mary, huge.
This is huge news, Polly. We deal almost every week with a reported case of sudden infant death syndrome. And what we know is that most of those deaths are occurring 95% are in the first 6 months of babies' lives. It peaks at 2 to 4 months. They happen to be related to vaccine well baby visits. The rate of infant death, infant mortality in this country is way ahead of the rate in other developed countries. This is a really fascinating article. I highly recommend it. And so it references an article by Neil Miller, a very important researcher on vaccination, that he published in 2021. The real epidemic of SIDS starts with mass vaccination campaigns. It was in 1992 that the American Academy of Pediatrics launched this Back to Sleep campaign. And as you say, the drop that they allege is really related to reclassification of SIDS deaths and calling them suffocation or unknown causes. This is just a sleight of hand. It never reduced any deaths. In fact, the deaths have gone up. And as Dr. Paul Thomas, pediatrician, points out, 80% of the cases reported to VAERS for sudden infant death are within 7 days of vaccination. So I'm very hopeful, Polly, we're going to talk more about it in this program, that the real research now in records related to vaccines are going to take a very strong, hard look at what is really behind SIDS.
Yeah, and we at CHD TV are playing SIDS stories or vaccine injury deaths every single day throughout May. We have so many, Mary, we could go on for longer than that. Gravely concerning, spike protein found in female stroke victims up to 17 months after receiving the mRNA COVID vaccine. Researchers found the spike protein inside the cerebral arteries, which flow to the brain. The study confirmed that in all of the patients, some of the spike protein was detected. This originated from the COVID-19 vaccines. Again, this is huge news.
This just underscores the need to stop all of these shots right now, Polly. It really underscores the need for a global moratorium. What Dr. Ploth in this article is cited saying is that this shows a plausible mechanism. If the spike protein is going to the brain and it's causing clots and causing hemorrhagic strokes, it really helps us understand. And as our own Carl Jablonowski says, what this suggests is that these side effects may be lasting forever. So it's huge news, which is not being covered at all by the mainstream media.
But the big question that everybody's asking over and over again is, why have they not been pulled? We can see the safety data is not there. We can see that people have been killed by these shots and injured beyond understanding. So why are they still on the market?
Well, Polly, I think money is always a good first choice to look at. And I think there were huge $1 trillion investments in this messenger RNA platform, and they don't want to kill the platform. So I don't know that, the 4 big pharmaceutical companies, multi-billion-dollar enterprises, I don't think they care about COVID shots so much, but they care about this platform, which I personally believe, as I wrote a foreword in a book by Doctors for COVID Ethics, is never going to be a safe platform ever, just like vaccination is never going to be safe for everybody. But I don't think that the moneyed interests globally are yet prepared, and they have a lot to do with politics. So I think it's coming, Polly. I do think it's coming, but it's too slow.
Yeah, they don't want to kill the platform, but they're happy to kill the people. All right, Michael Nevadakis in The Defender. Another study shows higher miscarriage rate among women who received the COVID vaccines. The author of the peer-reviewed study said their findings reinforce the effectiveness and safety of COVID-19 vaccination in pregnant women. However, scientists said the study adds to mounting evidence that the vaccines haven't been proven safe for pregnant women. Absolutely have not been proven safe.
No. So what was shocking in this, not that much shocks us anymore, Polly, but what's shocking in this story, which I hadn't recalled, this is from the Pfizer papers that Naomi Wolf and Daily Clout did. Apparently Pfizer lost, I put that in quotation marks, lost the records of 234 pregnant women in the clinical trials. So they only had 36. And I know that Senator Ron Johnson has put in place a subpoena against Dr. Tim Shimabukuro at FDA for falsifying and losing documents there about this pregnancy issue, because it looks like of those 36 women whose records they didn't lose, there was an 80% miscarriage rate, which is unbelievable. And as Naomi Wolf is quoted in this article saying, this is the biggest crime ever committed against humanity. Also in this article, really interesting, epidemiologist Nick Hulsher points out that there's a new preprint about based on Czech women, and the women who got the COVID shots during pregnancy had a 33% less likely successful pregnancy rate than the unvaccinated. So that's a third drop. That is, that's huge, Polly. It's just huge.
And we still don't know enough about the mRNA babies, the babies born.
No, we absolutely don't. We have very little idea. I guess they rolled this shot out at the very end of 2020. So probably we're starting to see those, toddlers. I think it's a really important question, Polly.
This is Barron's reporting in The Defender. Moderna and Pharma stocks fall as FDA names industry critic as top vaccine regulator. This is Dr. Vinay Prasad, a critic of FDA policy and the US COVID-19 response. Prasad has been harshly critical of the drug industry and condemned his predecessor, Dr. Peter Marks, as too friendly with drug makers. And this has been pretty much all over the news. We do have a very good article on that in the Defender as well.
Yeah, well, it's very exciting. We'll come back to talk about Dr. Prasad, but yeah, very exciting that the industry is seeing this as bad news. That's good for people.
Yeah, and sorry about Moderna's stocks falling. It's very sad for them. Suzanne Burdick in the Defender. Scientist who promoted hydroxychloroquine named to top pandemic prevention post. Stephen J. Hatfield, a virologist, and the position is within the HHS. And Hatfield defended his position of hydroxychloroquine, saying that 5,000 controlled randomized peer-reviewed studies attest to the drug's safety and effectiveness when administered early in the course of the disease and at proper dosage as well.
Again, I think really significant. So there are all of these people that are very, very strong critics of industry and of the Biden administration policies during COVID that are being appointed to these very important positions. So Stephen Hatfield, for him to have stood out and been promoting hydroxychloroquine, which we know was essentially outlawed for use against COVID, that's remarkable. He had put this into the strategic stockpile. As this article reminds us, Polly, and our film, Vax 3 reminds us, hydroxychloroquine had received emergency use authorization in March 2020, but then when they wanted to put drugs on the market and give them EUA, they had to take hydroxychloroquine off. So in June 2020, they recalled the emergency use authorization. And we have nurses in Vax 3 who are saying early on in 2020, hydroxychloroquine was getting these patients better. And then it was pulled so that remdesivir and other things would get emergency use authorization. Because one of the criteria for emergency use authorization is there's nothing else that's available that is successful. So they had to tank, and there were some essentially completely fraudulent studies about hydroxychloroquine. The other thing that's fascinating about Dr. Hatfield is that he had been a scientist working on bioweapons for the Army at Fort Detrick around anthrax. And he was apparently framed by the Department of Justice to be the perpetrator of the letters that were sent around 9/11. And in June 2008, the Department of Justice agreed to settle with Dr. Hatfield for $4.6 million. That's a lot of money in a settlement, Polly. I don't think we know the details there, but that it to me suggests somebody who is unafraid to go up against the mainstream and unafraid to go up against bureaucrats. So I think that's an exciting appointment. He's at ASPR now. He's at the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response.
Brenda Belletti, Defender. Trump pauses federally funded gain of function research in the US, but only for 120 days. Some gain of function critics celebrated news and others urged caution. The order ends any present and all future federal funding for such research in the countries China, Iran, and other nations. The order also temporarily pauses federally funded research using infectious pathogens and toxins in the US, again, for only 120 days.
Well, Polly, as our dear friend and expert on bioweapons research, Dr. Meryl Nass says, this is an excellent start. She was consulted on the drafting of this. She's thrilled. It gives us 120 days. It gives us 4 months to come up with a safer, more enforceable, more transparent process. So Secretary Kennedy, head of the NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, were with President Trump when he signed this. I think, as Meryl Nass said, this is just a fantastic start. Of course, this is not the end of it. And right now, we are reminding people that while he was at Children's Health Defense, Robert Kennedy wrote the book, The Wuhan Cover-Up and the Terrifying Bioweapons Arms Race. I highly recommend that book. It is a page-turner, Polly, and it really helps us to understand the vaccine research. All vaccine research had a shadow of its relationship to biologic bioweapons. So I highly recommend that book.
Mary, it's almost, I mean, I feel like in the last few weeks, you've really seen Secretary Kennedy really settling into his position, and we're starting to see some real powerful things coming out from him.
Holly, on May 22nd, he and President Trump and half the cabinet will be looking at their 100-day report from the Make America Healthy Again agenda. In 100 days, which is not until May 22nd, since Bobby Kennedy was confirmed, he has done a tremendous amount of things. And remember that under President Trump's executive order, in 100 days, they have to give a basic assessment of where things are. And then in 180 days, which is going to be in the fall, he has to say, the secretary has to say, this is our strategy to overcome the health challenges that we're facing. So I think May 22nd, which is not this week, Polly, but the following week, is going to be a very exciting week for talking about the Make America Healthy Again movement.
Okay, look forward to it. Dr. Vinay Prasad, let's talk about him, replaces ousted Peter Marks as chief FDA vaccine regulator. Now, Dr. Vinay Prasad is a hematologist, an oncologist, and an outspoken critic of the COVID-19 vaccines for children and the government's response to the pandemic. He's replaced Dr. Peter Marks as the director of the Center for Biologics and Evaluation and Research, the federal agency that oversees vaccine approval. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems a pretty good appointment.
This is very exciting. What I like best about Dr. Prasad is he's outspoken that there should be no federal recommendation for children to get COVID shots. He says it is absurd. That makes him, a giant in my mind. He's also been really outspokenly critical of Peter Marks in his role at CBER in FDA. So I'm very excited about this. Candidly, Polly, during COVID, he was not always kind to people in the health freedom movement, but I think we have to be willing to look beyond that and see what he's saying today. He seems to be close with Commissioner Macari, I'm not quite sure which it is. And there's an interesting dialogue that's right now on X between Macari and Prasad. I'm excited that we really are seeing very different kinds of people being put into important roles that relate to health in the United States.
Yeah, Bobby's building his team at long last.
He is.
Okay, well, let's talk about this. Who's the real Peter Marks? New website exposes failure of former FDA vaccine czar to protect Americans from COVID vaccine dangers. TheRealPeterMarks.com, that's the website name, hosts public statements by Peter Marks. He's an MD, has PhD, recordings of his call with vaccine-injured individuals and previously unreleased FDA records. The documents show that Marks knew early on that COVID-19 vaccines caused serious injuries, but ignored the evidence. Now, this is really the news of the moment, isn't it?
Polly, I've watched some of these videos of Peter Marks with the vaccine injured, with Bree Dressen and with Dr. Joel Walskog and with others who formed React 19. And they are chilling videos where he expresses sympathy to them, but he's basically telling them, don't tell the world. We at NIH are working on this. Just hold pat. Just be patient. And then he does nothing, Polly. As Bree Dressen, one of the founders of React 19, says in this article, that his tagline should be profits over people. He was aware of what happened to the girl, Maddie DeGarry, and he blew it off. He is truly an apologist here for the mRNA shots. And he proudly says that he was the architect of Operation Warp Speed. And we will show at the end of this program today, Polly, a short video that we've just done juxtaposing what Peter Marks is saying in Face the Nation after he left the FDA with testimony that you received, Polly, on the bus. He is a liar, and I am so grateful that he is gone from the FDA and that Bobby Kennedy has put in place somebody who says that, no more lies.
Yeah, and who's behind this website? Is it React 19?
It's React 19 together with ICANN, together with Follow the Silenced, which is the film that is just about to come out, which really focuses on Bree Dressen. I've seen it, Polly. It's excellent. I recommend it to people. It really shows what the experience was of people who were injured by the COVID shots. And you'll remember that Bree Dressen was injured even before the shots came on the market. She was in the clinical trials for AstraZeneca. And so this is a really important chronology, different than VAX-3. This isn't so much the hospital protocols, but it is about the people early on who were trying to get the word out to Americans. They were kicked off of Facebook. Senator Ron Johnson, who listened to them, was marginalized. It's a really important thing for people to watch, because I think we all have, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder after COVID, and it's easy to forget, and we don't want to go there. But that film, Follow the Silenced, and all of the people who were victims of the shots were silenced. It really helps us remember how horrible it was, how truly horrible it is, and how really we're on the right path to start uncovering what happened and tell the truth.
Yeah, and huge gratitude to Brie Dressen for speaking out the way.
She's been, and I have to say, Polly, there's a fantastic biography slash autobiography by a woman named Caroline Pover called Worth a Shot. And it is Brie Dressen's story. And it's just a fantastic, quick read, telling us a little bit more about who Brie is, which this film will also do, and then what happened to her during COVID. She's absolutely a hero slash heroine of the COVID era, without a doubt.
Michael Nevadakis in The Defender, US will track vaccine injuries in real time using electronic patient records. The new system is designed to address shortcomings in the two governments-run vaccine safety monitoring systems. So there's VAERS and the Vaccine Safety Data Link, which an HHS spokesman said they have become templates of regulatory malpractice. Now, we have been covering this, but that's the latest one. Michael Nevadakis does a good write-up on that if you want more on it.
Holly, this is fantastic news. This is how Bobby Kennedy is going to be able to tell the American public by September what are the leading causes of autism. So they have millions and millions of records that they have de-identified access to through Medicaid and Medicare. And this is just fantastic news that they're going to let the data speak. We know, Polly, that the VAERS data system, this was established through the CDC, captures less than 1% of actual vaccine injury. So it's a useless forecasting system. It's useless. It's not telling us anything. And so I'm thrilled that they're basically junking theirs. They're basically junking the vaccine safety data link that Dr. Peter Marks tried to hide from the secretary. And they're basically going to take new data sources.
How are they going to do it? Because at the moment, when parents go back to the doctor and try and get a VAERS filled out, they'll say no, it's not vaccine injury.
Well, Polly, our next story I think really goes into this more deeply, actually, pulling back the curtain.
Let's read it out. It's Suzanne Burdick. It's pulling back the curtain. NIH will use Medicaid and Medicare records to study autism. National Institutes of Health, known as NIH, researchers looking to uncover the root causes of autism will now have access to Medicare and Medicaid records, thanks to a data sharing initiative announced. It was announced last month, and US Secretary of Health and Human Services, known as the HHS, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., announced massive testing and research effort to determine what causes autism.
So, Polly, this article points out that there are 78 million children enrolled in Medicaid or a program of Medicaid, children's health insurance program. 78 million records of really well-tracked kids' visits to doctors to get shots or for other kinds of issues, going to the hospital, going to doctor's visits, all tracked and paid for through Medicaid. 78 million records is way more than enough to pick up statistically significant associations. So this is fantastic news that they are really going to let the data speak. Bobby Kennedy's, many of his books have been called Let the Science Speak. We're now at a more granular level. Let the data speak. And what Bobby Kennedy has said he wants to do is have radical transparency and gold standard science. That means just look at the numbers, look at the records, and see what they say. So I couldn't be happier.
And also, it's not just autism, is it? It's the death.
No, it's everything. Listen, once the statisticians basically start looking at these de-identified documents, you're exactly right, Polly, that a lot of times, we just saw that in the sleep study we just talked about, they reclassify things. We know autism has been reclassified many times over the history of the diagnostic term autism. Now, looking at these de-identified records, they can see clusters. So sometimes it's going to be ADHD, sometimes it's going to be autism for SIDS death, sometimes it's going to be suffocation, sometimes it's going to be SIDS, sometimes it's going to be unknown causes. But they can put that all together because they're going to have so much data, Polly. They're going to have age, they're going to have location, they're going to have medications given, they're going to have the vaccines given. They're going to be able to do the kind of research that should have been done all along, Polly. There's a really good quote in this article by the head of Trial Site News, Daniel O'Connor, saying, with VAERS and the Vaccine Safety Data Link, we've been going in with a paper map, an outdated paper map into live combat. It's completely ridiculous that we haven't been using electronic records and artificial intelligence and machine learning to address what we're actually doing. And I think now that's starting to change. And this is a great use, in my opinion, of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
And we're going to see how much the American people are being, especially children, over-medicated. That's going to be horrific to see.
We got to look at it to fix it, Polly. We can't fix things if we don't know what the problem is.
And thank God we're looking at it at long last.
Exactly.
Okay, Brenda Belletti, Defender. Study shows flu vaccine disrupts menstrual cycles, authors say. Findings should reassure women. But Dr. Clayton Baker criticized the study's authors for downplaying the significance of the findings. He said the finding that 5% to 6% of women have substantial disruption in their menstrual cycle on the cycle that they get the shots, and a quarter of these women continue to have menstrual cycle disruption, is a major, not minor finding.
Well, kudos to Dr. Clayton Baker. He's absolutely right. He's saying that these women continue to have their menstrual cycle for 8 days if they just get the flu shot, or if they get the flu shot and the COVID shot. And we know, Polly, that vaccines are having impact on fertility. So this is basically reconfirming what we know. But now we have people with a platform saying this should have been done decades ago, and we have to investigate this. What is this really doing? So kudos. I'm glad this is being talked about.
Miranda Marcy, indefensible. Merck designed Gardasil trials to mask HPV vaccine harms. A newly unsealed expert report from Danish physician and world-renowned research methodologist, Dr. Peter C. Gotchi, reveals that Merck intentionally misrepresented the safety profile of its Gardasil HPV vaccine.
We published our book back in 2018, and people like Norma Erickson and Frida Burrell had been talking about it since the Gardasil vaccine came on the market in 2006. It's been terrible what has been happening to our teenagers and pre-teenagers worldwide with this completely indefensible vaccine by Merck. So this is a great article about Peter Gutsch's 350-page forensic analysis that he says shows, quote, clinical trial rigging, regulatory failure, and global deception. And he correctly says that these clinical trials were designed to deceive. I completely agree. And the article by Marianne Demasi, an important health reporter in Australia, says this Roby trial, which started, Polly, this spring, but has been postponed by both parties until September. She says that Roby could mark a historic turning point in pharmaceutical accountability, because the question is how many people were really harmed because the truth was hidden. So I have to say, Polly, I take a little credit here that I found out about this Roby case and I brought it to Bobby Kennedy's attention. And then Bobby, to his great credit, put together a plaintiff's lawyers team. And so this case has been ongoing since, I forget the year, Polly, but it's an incredibly long period of time, but it is finally getting to trial. It goes back in September. Jennifer Roby is a tremendous young woman who has really had to fight for her life since getting these Gardasil shots. And like everybody else who takes this shot, they're just trying to do the right thing. They just want to prevent cancer. They want to prevent they want to prevent hardship for themselves and their families. So I'm really excited that that this is in court and that this court proceeding may make a difference.
And to remind people that we've seen, I mean, before the COVID shot, it was the most injurious vaccine.
Absolutely. And it continues. It's still being pushed on preteens. It's being pushed on teens, and it's being pushed on people up to age 45 worldwide.
I mean, the amount of death from Gardasil, unreal. Bright light in the sky. Florida passes bill to ban and criminalize geoengineering. The bill, which makes it a third-degree felony to release any chemical, substance, or apparatus into Florida's atmosphere to affect the weather or climate. It's been cleared both the House and the Senate and awaits Ron DeSantis' signature. We did cover this last week, but it's so exciting. We're going to cover it again.
Holly, this is so exciting. And this is the beauty of our federal system, is that one state or a few states can take the lead, and then other states can copy them, and then it can create the momentum for federal legislation. So this is very exciting that Florida is just way ahead on this. And that was really the result of grassroots action of people all over the state just bombarding their senators and assembly people with letters saying, get on board with this legislation. So it's very exciting.
Well, now I really like this article. It's by the new lead. It's Would you eat a beet flavored gummy? Big Food doesn't think so. The FDA and HHS announced they would work with food manufacturers to phase out synthetic food dyes made from petroleum. However, while the changes should make foods healthier, it remains unclear how the switch will happen and what impact it could have on the food industry and consumers. Food manufacturers believe you don't want carrot or beet in soda or gummies. Well, I have to say, most of our movement, I mean, putting beet and carrot, and I'm just about to make my granddaughter's first birthday cake, and that is going to be beet and gummies, and whatever it is, beet and carrot. It's been going on for some time. We're quite happy with it because we don't want to poison our kids. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I mean, where do people think a lot of sugar comes from? It's beet sugar. Beets and carrots are very sweet. They're naturally sweet and delicious. I think they're wrong, and I also think that the food industry is now with much greater visibility to this issue of petroleum dyes and, sugar and toxic preservatives and additives. I think there's going to be a lot of public pressure to get rid of these dyes out of children's foods. They're mostly probably put into children's foods because they want the bright colors to attract the kids on, commercials and in the grocery aisles and say, mommy, buy me the bright red, Fruit Loops. I think those days are numbered myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see the advertising, what it's going to be. They're going to try and make it so it's disgusting, just like it was to eat bugs. It's now going to be disgusting to eat carrot in your cake or whatever. But no, we the people are not going to have any of it. We don't want that poison. And also, when you take a child out and let it choose a birthday cake, you actually are kind of self-harming that child. I mean, it's poison. It's poison in those cakes. Zen Honeycutt has been out there doing a fantastic job warning us of all the disgustingness in our food. Really grateful to Zen. Well, Mary, this article is by you, and I love the title. To all the attackers, we say bring it on. So this is our 1 million match campaign. It's underway, and basically your contribution will help us reach our 1 million goal. And it's all in this article here. Anything we're very grateful for, because it's match. It's a $1 million match, and it helps us to keep Children's Health Defense going and keep fighting for you, right?
100%. Polly, you do so much at CHD TV. Our dear colleague, Catherine Paul, does so much at Defender. Danny Nichols does so much with social media, not to mention Brian Hooker doing work in science, Kim Mac-Rosenberg doing work in litigation, and people throughout the organization. We are doing a lot, and we want to continue doing everything that we're doing for you, because we believe that getting the truth out in all these ways, education, advocacy, science, litigation, is really important, especially right now when we have opportunities we've never had before. So if you can, please donate. It's matched. We're incredibly grateful.
Yeah, and also like our tech departments and we were having a meeting recently with them, and they're always hitting back at all the arrows flying at CHD behind the scenes. Like, there's loads of people behind the scenes doing all this work to make, for example, this show.
Exactly, Polly. I'm just mentioning a few names, but there's a lot of people who make this operation run. We are, Polly, you and I, just two out of many, many people who really are making it all happen, doing work in electromagnetic radiation, making sure that we are talking about food, talking about geoengineering, talking about pesticides, talking about vaccines. There's a lot of work keeping the donations, keeping the track of that, keeping track of all the laws that relate to our organization. It's a lot, and we can't do it without your help. And so we're so grateful.
Because we're not pharmaceutically funded.
No.
Like other big
and Polly, we don't, we sell t-shirts and I welcome you to our store. We have those great onesies that Senator Bernie Sanders loved, but we don't sell products. We sell information, we sell our advocacy, we sell our litigation and our science, and we don't sell it. We get donations, and that's how we exist. We don't exist without donations, full stop. So if you're watching, if you like what you see, one way to make sure we can keep doing it is by giving.
That's right. So thank you to all of you for whatever you can do, and sharing the videos, sharing Defender articles. All of these things really help Children's Health Defence. Thank you so much for that. And just have a wonderful, wonderful Mother's Day, everybody. And we're now going to show you a special clip that Children's Health Defence have put together. And then we're going to go to our geoengineering reporter for the week. Pray big, everyone. Stand firm. Never settle. Remember how much you're loved. Enjoy your day. Mary and I'll be back next week.
Thanks, Polly.
There's no reason to put your child at that risk because the vaccine does not cause death.
So MMR killed your kid?
Yes.
14 months?
Yeah, 14 months old, yeah.
I went into the bedroom and uncovered his quilt and then realised that he died.
He had the MMR on a Tuesday and he never woke up Thursday morning.
It does not cause encephalitis.
Once she had her first MMR vaccine, she was diagnosed with Rasmussen's encephalitis, which is an encephalitis of one side of the brain.
It does not cause autism.
He very, very quickly regressed, lost all language, lost all eye contact.
He showed regression after his MMR. We went to our current pediatrician, who within 5 minutes gave us the autism diagnosis, because it was so blatantly obvious.
We definitely saw a serious decline after the MMR vaccine at 15 months.
So, very safe vaccine that is going to potentially protect your child and save its life.
I'm Claire Julie, you're watching CHD TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. While evidence continues to mount, major institutions are doubling down on denial, from the rising frequency of extreme weather to the strange patterns we see in the sky above us. Questions about the forces driving these changes remain unanswered by the mainstream narrative. Are these weather shifts simply a side effect of a warming world, or are human interventions playing a much larger role? Our expert Dane explains how misdirection and media silence have become powerful tools in suppressing the story.
Okay, let's put this headline up. Conspiracy theories fuel state efforts to ban geoengineering. Who wrote that article and what's this about?
That's a mainstream media source that is comparing anyone who questions the government narrative to be associated with all these other issues as well. They try to lump it all in together to paint with a broad brush, and anybody who questions government is a, quote, conspiracy theorist. Anybody who throws that term out, Polly, the conspiracy theorist term, that's the final fallback of the factless and the fearful. With mainstream media, those people are criminal accomplices to the cover-up of these crimes, and they should be seen as such. If you help someone cover up a murder, you're a criminal accomplice. And if these people are playing the same part, how does that put them in any different position? And so the population should realize this. When they're sending out a message, make it peaceful and professional to these people, but send a link to the dimming, again, credible data from a credible source, and CC as many other activists, aware and awake individuals, openly CC them, so that if you have 50 or 100 other people on there, this person you're sending this message to and a link to the dimming, asking them to explain what's happening in our skies, so they know many are listening to that conversation and many are awaiting their answer. Put them on the spot professionally and peacefully.
Because they're trying to put the geoengineering movement, and they're trying to say you guys are like anti-vaxxers, and they're trying to lump all of these different movements together, saying that they're all crazy.
At what point do people address the obvious, that you can't inject harmful elements into a human body and not have a very bad result? How obvious is that? And do we think the same people would not do what they're doing in our skies? It's the same core of power, period. And they can spray anything they want in our skies. In fact, they have set the system up specifically so that you can't stop them from doing this. I've spoken in front of the entire CAR board, California Air Resources Board, huge pollution control board, in front of a room full of farmers. They were making the farmers change the engines on their equipment because of the particulate matter it releases. And I made the CAR board admit that even though there's a source of particulate pollution in our skies that's mathematically 100,000 times greater, they don't care because it's not in their jurisdiction, so it doesn't exist to them. The whole system has been set up this way. For particulate pollution, Polly, the smaller the particle, the more harmful it is to human health. We're talking about nanoparticles with climate engineering. You can fit up to 100,000 across the width of a single human hair. They're inconceivably small, thus they're immensely harmful. And the whole system's been set up not to show this particulate pollution. So they test for PM10, 10 microns, or occasionally PM2.5. Those are boulders compared to a nanoparticle. The mountain of nanoparticles, tens of millions of tons annually, go completely under the radar because the whole system has been set up not to show that particulate pollution.
So you recently mentioned on your podcast drafting a letter and offering a link to the dimming to send to these reporters and news outlets. How's that going? Are you going to do that?
Well, we have. I mean, we have activists all over the world sharing our data now. We've taken, at our expense at geoengineeringwatch.org, we sent individual packages with our 20-page fact and photo full-color booklets to every single media, everybody in the continental U.S., about 13,000 separate packages. We did the same to every single firefighting agency on the entire North American West Coast, extending into Canada, several thousand more packages. We're doing everything we can. But we have a population that doesn't want to face the truth. They want to pretend some sort of political policy is going to save them from what's happening. It doesn't matter what stripe is on the occupant of the White House. Their purpose, their point, polarize, divide, distract populations by whatever means necessary to keep them from looking up, to keep them from waking up, to keep them from seeing the oncoming train. And that's exactly what's going on. We are rapidly running out of time. We need everyone to join this battle, to send out flaming arrows of awareness, and never underestimate your personal power to start a spot fire of awareness and stoke that fire with credible data. Ask other people to do the same. If we could simply push this issue to the full light of day and get past the "it's just jet exhaust" disinformation campaign that's coming from the very top, and we could expose this issue and populations knew what had been done to them without their knowledge or consent, we would cause a shockwave around the world, Polly.
We love hearing from our viewers at CHD TV, so please reach out to us with any questions, any comments, or if there's anybody in this field that you would like to hear more from, please let us know, plug some experts and we'll try to get them on. Please reach out to us at goodmorning@CHD TV. Thanks so much for watching the Geoengineering Report. We'll see you next time on CHD TV.
Okay, can you tell us your name, please?
My name's Shirley.
Is this a story about your daughter and her babies?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where it all starts.
Okay.
2006, she became pregnant with twins. They considered it a high-risk pregnancy, I think because it was twins from the beginning. So she did everything she was supposed to. They ended up telling her that she had to be induced because they were concerned about one of the twins. So they sent her on a Friday to be induced. She didn't have the children till Monday afternoon. I guess they weren't ready yet. And she had a boy and a girl. They each were about 5 pounds or so.
And we have some pictures here. I'm just going to... Is this your daughter here?
Yes. So my little grandson, Liam, was jaundiced, and they were aware of that. She had a number of follow-up visits. She had a visiting nurse a couple times. He in particular had a little bit of trouble with the nursing and so on. But, it didn't seem anything troubling. And then they took the children for their 2-month shots. And at that time, neither of them was even up to 10 pounds yet. They were both somewhere around 9 pounds in weight at 2 months old. So that was on, I think, a Thursday. And the only thing that I noticed different was, because my daughter and the twins were living with me at the time, was a lot of crying and screaming during the night. And I remember, waking up, do you need me? And she was like, no, I can handle it. And, it just seemed like that was a normal thing that happened with babies. Then come Monday morning, Liam went unresponsive while he was being held. And we had to call 911. And he was taken to the local hospital and then airlifted into Boston. And that was the beginning of the end of our family as we knew it. Both of the children developed like really red eyes, which we did notice over the weekend.
So this is following the vaccinations.
Yes.
They developed red eye before Liam was unresponsive. You noticed that.
And honestly, none of us knew that it meant anything. I mean, I've had allergies my whole life. I have red eyes, so I didn't know. None of us knew that it meant anything in particular. But apparently it did. And we were accused of shaking the baby. And I was home with Paige, the other twin. Started getting calls from DCF saying, tell us about the abuse. And I was like, there is no abuse. He's sick. That's why he's in the hospital. And I was ordered to bring the other twin into Boston, which I did. And they did some kind of a scan on her, and then they said she had all these fractures, which she didn't, but they said she did. And they ended up putting her also in ICU and sticking her on IVs for a few days. And, the police, the DCF, neither of them ever lived with us again.
Neither babies?
No.
Did Liam survive?
No. He died 2 days later. After being in ICU, they took him off the life support. She was sent out to foster homes, and there were visits allowed at first, and sometimes I was allowed to go to them too.
Is this Paige?
Yes. So any of the pictures you see that are a little bit older are during DCF visits that were taken. So there was eventually a trial, care and protection trial, and both parents were deemed unfit parents because no one would admit to causing injuries to the children. So obviously that was horrible.
For your daughter,
Yes. So she, of course, was completely unemployable after that. She lost her job. She lost her focus. She lost everything. Her first psych hospitalization was in 2009, right around Mother's Day. When I visited her, she just kept saying, I'm a mother, but I have no one to be a mother to. Fast forward, she kind of got better from that. She was still with the dad. Another baby was going to be coming, same parents. I took my daughter to 2 different lawyers that had worked with us on the first case. They said, it's not going to be a problem. It's a closed case. It's a whole different thing, but it wasn't. They came into the hospital and took my other granddaughter away at 2 days old. So I don't want to get too far from the vaccines, but it's all kind of connected. It all kind of blends together. So both of my granddaughters are adopted. They're both doing well now. Fortunately, the older one ended up being adopted by her other grandmother. I had applied and told absolutely I was not allowed because I was a suspect, because my daughter lived with me when the incident happened. But that's fine, so I do get to see her, and my other granddaughter is adopted by a different family who's not related to us, but we know them and they are wonderful, and I do get to see both of them, so I'm luckier than a lot of people, at least in that way. I
just want to get back to, so your daughter not only Liam dies following these shots and she gets accused of shaking or whatever.
Yes.
They then take away the, what's her name? Paige gets taken away, so she has to mentally deal with that. She then has another baby, and 2 days later, they come and they take that baby. What did they say to her when they went in there?
They had come in the night before, which I believe was, if I remember right, was a Sunday night, and I just went, that's not good. Why would DCF people be working on a Sunday evening? And I wasn't there when they came to talk to her in the hospital at that time, but she of course called and told me, and they had moved by then. The parents were living in a different part of Massachusetts, so it was a different hospital, everything, but I don't know, I guess they find out stuff, of course, from searches. So they said they were taking her based on history.
I can't imagine what she was going through.
Well, she handled it the best she could. I can't say that I would have done differently, but she did start to spiral after that. She started to get huge panic attacks, PTSD, anxiety, depression, bipolar. They kept stacking on the diagnoses. She did go back to school, and she got an associate's degree. But she had a really hard time with, first of all, finding jobs and then keeping jobs, because by then, emotionally, she just wasn't doing all that well. So fast forward, part of her not doing well was that she did do some drugs, and she ended up getting a lot of physical illnesses from that, and she ended up with an infection in her bones. And she was on IVs for 6 months, 4 hours, every 4 hours apart. So she had to go to a nursing home for that to happen. And they 911'd her to the hospital in August, and she was doing okay. They said she was fine and didn't need the PICC line anymore, and so on. They took it out. They were all set to discharge her the next day. And I got a call at work to come to the hospital right away because she had cardiac arrest. And what I found out was that she was very distraught at being discharged. She didn't feel she was ready, I guess. And the social worker went to talk to her, and they found her unresponsive in the bathroom in her hospital room. And she died at 36 years old.
I'm so sorry. This is tragic.
So, getting back to the granddaughters, like I said, they're both doing well. The older one, I don't believe gets any vaccines unless they're absolutely required, but she doesn't get anything recommended. She doesn't have any kind of exemption or anything. The younger one, and she is overall good, but she does get a lot of, respiratory and ear infections and stuff, but she did have a diagnosis of epilepsy, and she was on seizure meds for quite a while. But right now, she hasn't had any seizures in a couple of years. She's doing good. The younger one is also an awesome kid. Her family does do all the vaccinations, and she just has she has ADHD. And she has some anxiety issues, but I think some of them might even go back to, earlier childhood stuff. I'm not sure what the anxiety is related to, but she's great. I have a good relationship with both of them, and I'm thankful for all that part.
So let's summarize this up, okay? Because it all started with the 2-month
Yes,
shots.
the 2 month.
So the 2-month shots, and so that, to remind everybody, there she is, beautiful Sarah. And that's the father?
Yes.
Okay. And they get pregnant and they have twins. So there's probably the earliest picture of those twins.
Yeah. Oh, that's my mother with them. That would be the twins' great grandmother.
And you can see that he is sort of jaundiced looking, right?
Yes.
So he probably got. Did you get Hep B and vitamin K at birth?
Yes, they both did.
Of course they did. And then they go to the 2-month shots, and they have this sort of red eye thing, apparently. So he gets responsive Liam and gets taken into hospital where they immediately suspect abuse. Which you've heard the story so many times. They then make you bring in Paige because they're now worried about her. They then take her and put her in ICU, even though she's not sick.
Correct.
And hook her up to drugs of whatever, or IVs, we don't know.
And discharge her with Tylenol.
Gave her Tylenol.
And did some follow-up scan 2 months later. And of course, there was no evidence of fractures because she never had any in the first place.
Okay. And so then, tragically, we lose Liam. He dies. They take him off the life support, you say. So whatever that means. And then Paige then gets fostered out. You're not allowed to look after her. And nor is Sarah. Sarah, I don't even know how she coped with that, then eventually does get pregnant again, gives birth in hospital, and 2 days after giving birth in hospital, the baby is taken away from her, and you as her mother are not allowed to look after that baby. It has to go to another family member.
Correct.
Then Sarah obviously has issues following this utterly tragic story, and uses things to help her get through it, I presume. Some kind of drugs, right? Okay. No judgment at all from anybody. And then she gets an infection in her bones and is admitted and has a cardiac arrest and dies. I would think every viewer listening to this will say the same. This is an utterly tragic story. And it all started with the vaccinations.
Yes, it's this giant mushroom cloud that totally derailed. It's nothing you could ever possibly think of. I don't know. We thought we did everything right in, planning for the babies. We were happy about it, although it was a little bit of a surprise at first. But I gotta say, vaccines is not a thing we talked about between Sarah and myself. We always were skeptical about flu shots. Like, I had never had any, ever, up until that point. Neither had she. But as far as childhood vaccines, we never thought about it. I do remember they had just, when they got home from the appointment and said, oh, the babies had their shots. And I was like, oh my gosh, aren't they so little? And they were like, well, they said we had to. So, and then we weren't allowed to do anything on VAERS because we had no standing, because the state owned the children, if you know what I mean. So we were told we couldn't even do a VAERS report. And then, of course, all the time that they were in foster care before they were officially adopted, you have no choice. You get every vaccine there is that's on a schedule of any kind. So then just myself, I never had flu shots until they started making a really big fuss about it. I've worked in healthcare for a long time. It was never a big deal. It was just sign a form, yes or no, and you would get a little lecture if you said no, but there was no follow-up until a few years ago. And unfortunately, I did not have an exemption, so I did have a couple of flu shots until I finally figured out how to find a form, because at that time all the forms I could find were about school more so than about adults. So I did end up having a couple and I wrote things on the forms like, under duress, I don't agree with this. And where it said, I accept it, I said, no, I'm forced to do it. But nevertheless, I did it. So then I did get the religious exemption, fortunately, just before the COVID stuff. I had started a new job in the fall 2019 into winter 2020. I skipped every possible deadline for getting a flu shot, and then I got a call from the administrator, and I was told that I was going to be suspended for 10 days, and if I still didn't get the flu shot, I was going to be fired. So I made sure that I had my form all filled out. I went and got it notarized, even though it's not even required in Massachusetts to get it notarized. And I printed out every regulation from the state, from the Mass Senior Care Association, for everything. I put them all in a big folder and left them on her desk, and she never harassed me about it again. But then the COVID thing seemed like when you had a form that said all vaccines, that kind of became an issue, and somehow that wasn't covered by the religious exemption, and I had to go through all the stuff other people have to go through, of getting a letter from my pastor and all this other stuff. So the day before I was supposed to be let go, they called me down. I figured it was to turn in my keys and tell me what to do about emails and stuff, and they said, no, the company has accepted your exemption, but then I had to sign this form that I was like putting the entire world at risk and all that stuff, and supposed to wear all this stuff, face shield, the orange ribbon of shame, because the other people got a green ribbon, that got just nonsense, but whatever, I'm still employed. The company that made that form is not in this state, so it's okay. I'm there.
Oh, you've been through a lot.
I have.
Yeah. This is the first time you've publicly told this
I've
story.
never talked about this in public. I figure legally there's nothing else they can do to us at this point.
Is this Liam here?
Yes.
It's just tragic. We're really so sorry this happened to your family. I mean, it's such a huge loss.
Yeah. So many futures have been changed or taken away totally because of all this.
Thank you for telling us the story.
You're welcome. I didn't think I could do it, but I'm doing it.
You did it really well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Autism destroys families, and more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHD has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and low IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.